Well, I am sorry to announce, but we have had an outbreak here locally. We've had an outbreak of grouchiness. It's rampant in households. The infection rate is almost 100%. So we're going to be wearing duct tape from now on. That's what my wife wishes I wore sometimes at home, right? We have been facing some unprecedented times, at least for us. It's not unprecedented across the course of history, but it's unprecedented for us to be facing this type of a scenario in 2020 here with COVID. Is just kind of run like a freight train through our lives, and it has left nothing untouched, really, right? And it's created just really a lot of chaos in our lives. And what's interesting to me is that, part of our culture is that, we know how to handle crisis. This isn't the first time that we've ever had something kind of come along. We almost kind of thrive in our DNA, or in our American DNA, of going, okay, there's a problem, let's rise up and we'll deal with this. And here COVID comes along, and it not only creates problem and crisis in our country, but the real power of COVID has seemed to be that it has taken the strengths that we would rely on right off the shelf, right? What do you do to combat COVID? Well, nothing. You just stay home. Oh. Well, you know what? We're going to rally together. We're going to support. Well, you can't be with people. You can't be close to people. Like everything that we would normally reach for and say, this is going to get us through, has been taken away. And it has created this deep weariness. I have felt it. And the weariness has gone from what I've seen as the whole spread of reactions here, right? There's those that are in deep fear and trembling, and they're concerned and could be rightly so there, of going, man, I've got to take every precaution, and I feel like COVID is the boogeyman hiding under my bed, and if I even get out of bed, it's going to pounce on me, to reactions of literally anger about this whole situation and the responses and the demands that seem to be placed on us, and kind of the craziness of it all, and everything in between. Basically, that pretty much describes like a normal day for me. Like, you don't have one emotional reaction, right? You kind of, forget all this, and we're going to go, well, we can't really do that. Well, we're going to do this. The changing landscape, almost on a daily basis, is just cuts us right down to the quick. I almost go, there's been the debate about what do you call this thing? I almost want to go, it's the American virus. Because if you had asked a year ago, what crisis could we deliver in America that would just bring it to its knees? If you put anything out there, no, we'll figure that out. We'll be able to handle this. We can come. But this thing has come, and it has just slipped past every one of our strengths and cut us right to the quick. It's laid us bare. And so we're weary. Weary is almost not a big enough word to describe kind of where we're at. So we want to take the next 4 weeks here and just kind of go, man, can we hit a reset button? Can we refresh? It's not that we're going to make COVID go away. It's not going to be that all these other situations that have compounded on it are going to go away, but can we refresh? Can we find a way as people of faith to go, this is where I'm going to stand? Matt's already been talking to us about that. I hope through these 4 weeks we look at some really practical ways of going, this is not necessarily telling you what to believe about COVID, but going, as people of faith, here's our bedrock. So today I want to talk about finding peace. This is kind of that first step of going, man, if we're going to refresh, we've got to like de-stress. We've got to go, how do we calm this thing down? How do we back it off? How do we find some stable ground even to stand on to figure out how we're going to respond? So I want to give us four steps here for this in finding our sanity in the midst of the chaos. Our first step is to turn on the remote. The second step is is finding peace. Hey, you know what? These are the jokes, folks. Come on. In the middle of COVID, we're going to need to get a laugh track here or something before Brian's on vacation. All right, so our first step in this is to recognize the gift of presence in our life. This is the bedrock of Christianity. I'm telling you, it's not morals, it's not law, it's not attending church. It is the presence of God in our life. As the opening video talked about, it talked about Jesus in his ministry, and there are times that we kind of have that feeling of going, you know what, I got to learn out of a book. Wouldn't it have been cool to be there with Jesus? Like they got something that we're getting robbed of, and we're getting the crumbs left over. But that really is a misunderstanding. Jesus was located in a body. He was kept to a certain crowd of people. There's only so many people you can talk to. In ascending, in being the risen Lord and sitting down at the throne of God, saying, now I am infinitely available to you. Is it any wonder that the book of Matthew gives us the last words of Jesus as this? And be certain of this, I am with you always to the very end of the age. This is the scene where he is to ascend. All the other gospel accounts are talking about him leaving, and Matthew goes, no, when he gives us our mission, when he says, this is what you're to be doing, this is what it means to be my follower, he ends his final words with this, I am with you always. This is the bedrock. It is in response to any other faith system or philosophy system that might give you lots of good techniques, might give you maybe bits of wisdom, maybe gives you absolutely nothing, because really you're on your own. We begin and end with going, we are not on our own. As crazy as this is, no matter how you're feeling at home, sitting on your couch watching this, the presence of God is with you. He says, I'm available. And it really, when you look over the whole course of the Bible, that is one of the most dominant themes of God going, I created a garden because I want to be with you. He came in the cool of the eve. When he comes to rescue the Israelites, it had been really cool. He had the pillar of fire and pillar of smoke day and night to go, look, the most important thing you need to know is I am with you. It only intensifies with Jesus. Yes, he's gone away. He's not here. We can't touch him. We can't hear him. But his ministry, his presence with us is that bedrock that we begin to stand on. Going back to last week, Matt was talking about Jesus' parable of building the house on the rock. Here's the rock, right here. This is it. That he's available to us and we are not on our own. We begin by doing that. No matter what the chaos is going on. Really, in spite of however we feel, whether we're processing this well, not processing this at all, falling into a ditch, it doesn't matter what situation you're in, God is available to you. We begin there. That's where we have to start. This is more than just kind of giving you some 5-step technique. You could go to any therapist and they could go, well, you know what? Do some stretching exercises. That will, de-stress you. And you know what? They're right. It will. We should all stretch. But for people of faith, this is where we begin. The second step of this is then to look at the promise that comes out of this. He goes, look, I am always with you. There's never going to be a place that you go. There's not going to be anything that ever touches you that I don't already know about, that I'm not there. And so the promise comes in the book of Hebrews. He writes, because God has said, never will I leave you. So he's building off of that, but he adds on to this, never will I forsake you. So we say with confidence, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me? Now, I want you to look at this. So he reiterates this theme of going, look, God's presence is with you, but then he adds on to this promise, never will I forsake you. To forsake is to abandon. Abandon is to mean to drop interest in, to stop providing any type of support. It is to basically say, I'm giving up completely on this situation or this person. That forsake isn't just kind of, I'm distracted. Forsake isn't going, you know what, I'm going to cut it to 50%. Forsake is to go, I'm done. God's promise to us is not only that he will never leave us, but that he will never abandon us. There's not going to be a time, there's not any point in this whole scenario where God goes, oh, well, I'll start over again. Forget this person. You know what? 80%'s not too bad. God doesn't play the percentage game. He goes, I'm in it for everybody 100%. I'm on your side. I'm not going to abandon you. And so look at how this lays out. The writer of Hebrews makes this very clear. So God has promised this. This leads to something, right? It leads to what? Confidence. Not fear, not worry, not anxiety, not being a victim of everything that's going on. It leads us to confidence because of who he is and what he will do and what his promise is. There's nothing that will ever come that he can't handle that takes us to confidence. That's the place of faith, right? Now, this isn't an arrogant confidence. This isn't like, oh, I'm unaffected, or I know everything, or I've got this. This is a confidence that says, God's got this. Because that's exactly what he goes on to say, right? This confidence then says something else. It says, the Lord is my helper, and I will not be afraid. Do you get that? This is a causal relationship in this passage. God's promise leads us to a confident saying of going, he's my helper. I don't have to be afraid. I don't have to be a victim. With all the apologies to every English teacher ever, God's got this. I want you to say that with me here in this room. Ready? God's got this. You people online sitting in your bathrobes, I see you. Well, no, not really. Say it. God's got this. This is the promise that we stand on. It's not a confidence that, you know what, I can handle this. It's not a confidence that says, I even have the answer. It firmly focuses us back to the Lord. What's interesting is this last line here. So what can mere mortals do to me? Well, you know what? People can do a lot of bad stuff to you. A lot of harm can come from other people. It's not saying that harm's not going to come. Do you understand that? What this passage is saying is no matter what comes, I don't need to fear because the most important thing is kept by my Lord. I don't need to fear. That's not what drives me. His promise gives me confidence. His confidence is what counteracts this anxiety, this fear, this weariness. And so then that leads to a third step. a change of perspective of going, okay, God is with me. He's never going to leave me. He will not forsake me. He's not going to fail. He's got this. Now I can begin to go, all right, what do I do with this? What do I do with this mess here? In Romans 8, Paul writes, a very famous verse, it says, and we know that in all things, not just some things, in all things, God works for the good of those who love him and have been called according to his purpose. Man, this is like such a favorite Bible verse. It's on bumper stickers, it's in songs, and everybody sings it, and we're like, oh, this is so great. God's gonna work to give me good. Because what we do is, we the important line here is God works for the good. And we know what the good is. The good, we kind of scratch that out and we go, the good is what I want. The good is my plan. The good is my agenda. I know that God is going to deliver what I want. That's what that verse is saying, right? Unfortunately not. Well, actually, fortunately so. Be careful what you want for. No, that's not saying that God delivers what we expect. He is for a much greater good, and he will use every and any situation at all towards that good. And he can take us through these type of times where we are cut to the quick and laid bare, and we are frustrated and weary and aggravated and feeling like the chaos is breaking in. There's a quote by C.S. Lewis that's just fantastic. I came across it years ago. It's this. He says, the great thing, if one can, is to stop regarding all the unpleasant things as interruption of one's own or real life. The truth is, of course, that what one calls the interruptions are precisely one's real life. The life God is sending one day, sending a person day by day. What a person calls one's real life is really a phantom of one's own imagination. Isn't that a bit what's plaguing us? When are we going to get back to normal? This isn't the way it should be. I should have had a graduation. We should have had this season. I should have had this. And we're just kind of like, we have been robbed and taken away from all this, and we're still trying this to live in one reality when, frankly, the situation is different. Whether we like it or not, whether it's real or not, the situation is different. And what C.S. Lewis is advising us is to go, you better stop living in your phantom world and you start living in the given world. This is where we're at. Now, this isn't a call to, kind of giving up and fatalism. It is the first step of going, wait a minute. God is at work in this situation. I'm here. He's not stuck over in my phantom life in the way that it was. God is here and now. And he's ready to work in us and through us here and now. We need to make a shift and say, what good are you at work in? In fact, another good quote is from J.J. Packer. He says, look, if you are stuck in this question of, well, why is this happening? Why can't we get out of this? You will never see any light. But if you ask, how is God being glorified? Or how can God use me? What is my place in this situation, in this reality? Your prayer will be answered. I think of somebody, deep and famous. We don't talk about them so much anymore, like Corrie ten Boom. When during World War II, she's hauled off to a concentration camp. I wonder, did they have somewhat the similar experience? Certainly that was much more horrendous. You're in a concentration. But we had a real life one day, and it felt like overnight, that's gone. Am I ever going to get back to it? Am I ever going to survive through this? But her and her sister were people of faith that said, what is God doing here in the concentration camp? He's not stuck out there waiting for me to get back to my normal life. He's at work even in the darkest, hardest place. Peace comes when we start to let go of this phantom and we start living where we are and saying, God, how can you use me? What are you doing here? So that takes us to our last step here. Well, our last step is practice. There's something to be done, right? That's the foundation. That's beginning to change our mind, but then we need to start changing some of our doing. And we see this in Philippians 4. Look at that. Notice, watch how Paul's doing this. He starts out with what? The foundation again. It keeps on coming up. The Lord is near. That's how we're starting. We're not starting with technique. We start with going, God's with you. He's for you. He's got this. Now you get to do something. Because that's true. Don't be anxious about anything. But in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Frankly, I think he overshoots the runway completely here. I don't know. I'm going to get a pair of scissors and cut this out. I think you should be allowed to be anxious about 10, 20% is an acceptable margin there. This whole anything. Isn't that kind of audacious there? Don't be anxious about anything. Really? I know a lot of parents are pretty anxious about school. I know a lot of teachers that are pretty anxious about school. I know church leaders, we're pretty anxious about the fall. What can we do? What can't we do? Trying to sort this out. He says, of course, the Bible never asks us to kind of stuff our feelings down. We respond to situations, we can get anxious about them. It's the way that we respond. In every situation, we go to him. You know, when we talk about practicality here, when you start getting overwhelmed and just kind of the beat down, sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is probably just take a deep breath and go for a walk. Right? I don't have any scriptural reference for that. Maybe Jesus did that at some point. But that can be a really spiritual thing. But you don't need any faith to do that. That's just a physical reality. You can be an atheist, and a deep breath and a go for a walk can make you feel a little bit better. You can be any type of faith, and that can help you out. It's what you do after that technique. It is the where do you go? What do you do with the pile that's still there when you come back? Paul's going, everything back to prayer. Don't misunderstand this as some type of kind of like a make sure you do this. You're required to do this. Don't get this messed up. This is the breathing part here of going, if our faith doesn't drive us to God when we're in trouble, then what is that faith? If we're not to fear any situation because the Lord is my helper, and then we never tap into that, what's the value of your faith? Paul's reminding us everything drives us to God. That's why we don't have to fear a situation. Not because I don't necessarily know, but because it takes me closer to him. How's your prayer life doing, frankly, in the last 6 months? I know, you've been busy. There's been lots of activities. There's so many meetings. Oh, wait. Yeah, that's not happening. How's your prayer life, really? Not as a a requirement, but just going, do you ask God for help when you're in trouble? When the waves come for you? Do you go, hey, I need your strength right now? When we do this, what's interesting is he doesn't leave it with this, because this is kind of us-centric here. It's what this next step that he does in verse 7. He says, okay, the Lord is near, so you can drive into him. You can pursue him in prayer. Bring everything, the good, the bad, whatever. And then watch what happens. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Did you catch that? Something gets activated when we pursue God here. The peace of God. That's the actor in this sentence here. God's peace becomes available to us and does two things in this passage. It goes way beyond your understanding. So the peace of God is not necessarily answers, and it's not necessarily, hey, I got a total grasp of this situation. See, that's our human instinct. I want to come up with a solution. I want to have the answer. I want to have a whole plan. I want to know where this is going. And God goes, look, the peace of God doesn't work that way. It's not that he can't give you understanding, but it goes beyond that. It comes as a gift. When we tap in to the resources available, it's made available. And it does one thing in particular. It guards your hearts and your minds. Now, this word guard is rather particular here, of going, when it's used in regards to like a city, they went, don't think of like a solo guy standing there going, kind of like the palace there in England there, it's kind of perfunctory, and they do the kick step, and they just stand there, and you try to get them to move, and really not doing anything. This is used in the sense of having a garrison of soldiers protecting the city. This is some serious business that he's talking about. You are well taken care of. You are guarded. So moms, think of you at the playground. You got the kids. You've let them loose. What are you doing? You're scanning. You're watching for every little thing. There's nothing that you're missing. You're paying attention. Oh, what's that guy doing over there? Oh, he's up on that ladder. I am paying attention to every single thing. Dads, when you're taking care of things around the house, it's time to go to bed. You're going around, you're double checking doors. Why? Because my job is to guard. I'm paying attention to what's going on here. This is my most valuable stuff. This is how the peace of God, God's peace, works in our lives. It goes beyond what we do. It's more than just a trick or a technique. When we tap into the reality of God is with us, he's for us, he'll never leave us. It activates things that are way more powerful than we could ever bring to the table. It guards our hearts and minds. It's not to say that we can't be human. This is not the Frozen, conceal, don't feel moment. The Bible is very honest about our experiences. But it's always clear about where you take that. Because there's a strength. There's help available to us. God's peace will come. E. Stanley Jones was a Methodist missionary to India many years ago, and a very, very smart guy. He came up with a great quote on this in his observations of life. He said, "I am inwardly fashioned for faith, not for fear. Fear is not my native land. Faith is. I am so made that worry and anxiety are like sand in the machinery of life. It tears you up. Faith is oil. It greases things, it makes it work. I live better by faith and confidence than by fear, doubt, and anxiety. In anxiety and worry, my being is gasping for breath. These are not my native air, but in faith and confidence, I breathe freely. These are my native air. A Johns Hopkins University doctor said, "We do not know why it is that warriors die sooner than non-warriors, but that is a fact." E. Stanley Jones says, "But I, who, I'm just a simple guy, I think I know. We are inwardly constructed in nerve and tissue and brain cell and soul. We are made for faith, not for fear. God made us that way. To live by worry is to live against reality. God offers us peace. We just need to tap into it. We just need to ask. We just need to stand on the solid rock of what the truth is, rather than going, oh, it's all up to me. I got to figure it all up on my own. We have one who stands guard over us and watches every step. As we wrap up today, and we're going to have the response song, Matt and I are going to be available up front here to anoint you with oil if you would like. If you want to just come forward and have a little dab on your forehead and just the peace of God spoken over you, the altar is open. I refuse to close the altar. I've hit my line in the sand. Just not going to do it. Governor Wolf is welcome to come here, and he can pray at the altar too. Anyone else? The altar is available to you. We're not going to have people pray with you. We want to try and respect different space, but I'm not going to handcuff God here. So if you would like to, during the song, you can come forward to Matt or I, and we'll anoint you if you want to take some time to pray up front and just go, you know what? I'm going to lay this at God's feet. I don't need to live this way anymore. I want to live by faith, the oil of my soul.